Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. So we're going to take a look at an epic tier list. Now I must say that this tier list only covers the generic content, okay? It doesn't really classify Espers according to PvP or PvE, so I'm just going to generically cover them so that you guys will know how useful your certain epic Esper is going to be in terms of my own opinion. So that's another thing that I need to mention. Everything that I say here is based strictly on my own opinion of the game and my own experiences with the game thus far, and it is definitely not the truth at all. So even if you find that your experience is different from mine, feel free to disagree. Let me know down in the comments below as well where you feel like an Esper that I probably put at a lower tier deserves a higher tier or something like that. So there will be 5 basic tiers. There will be the S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and the D tier. Now the S tier is very straightforward. It completely dominates every other single tier. The Espers in the A tier are really good. It's just that they are not as capable as the Espers in the S tier. And B tier Espers are just kind of average. They are useful in some areas, but that's about it. C tier Espers are those who are extremely niche, and D tier Espers are Espers that I would not recommend you to build at all unless you have a lot of extra resources. So we have 41 Espers to go. Let's start off with Alexa. So in terms of her usefulness, I would feel that she belongs into the niche category. There are some users for her, just that there are not many users right now. So there are some players who use her in PvP and in the Dark Starlord, but apart from that, I don't really feel like she has a lot of use elsewhere. Now next is Anesidora. She's definitely going to go straight into S tier because she makes some of the hardest content in this game very much manageable. So her third skill and her second skill combo is a hack. Running her with Ocean Waves makes her extremely powerful, and she is definitely one of the best PvP and PvE Espers right now. Now next is Arcana. There is a lot more to be desired for Arcana to work. So in order for him to be an efficient debuffer, he needs the enemies to have buffs, which is a huge problem because in most PvE content, enemies do not have buffs, whereas in PvE content, you just want to have the first turn, you do not really need Arcana, you can use other Espers like Lucas instead, so he doesn't find a lot of use right now. Now, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but Asenath is definitely going to go into S tier right now because she is just so useful in so many different content, especially the endgame content. Now, Bonnie is going to go into B tier. I'm struggling to put her between A and B tier. Now, the reason why I put in B tier is because she has more usefulness in PvP content as opposed to PvE content. That's not to say that she is not good for PvE. She is still pretty decent, especially in the Temporal Tower. Next is Catherine. She's also going to go into B tier. She has a couple of users right now in Fafnir, Desolate Lands, and maybe in Dark Starlord as well. Next is Celine. She's also going to fall into the category of B tier because just like Catherine, she has very few users, but she excels in those users. Next is Chloe. She's definitely going to go into S tier. She has always been in S tier and she definitely deserves the spot. She's just an incredibly strong DPS Esper for a lot of different content. And then next we have Djoser, who's just going to go straight into D tier because I've built him and he doesn't do anything at all. Eira is definitely going to go into A tier. This is a really strong position, by the way, so all the Espers in A tier are going to be very viable in a lot of different content, but she kind of falls off just a little bit in endgame content. Next we have Fabrice, who is definitely going to stay in A tier. He is always useful all the time. It's just that he finds very little use because most players who use him would probably only use him in holo battles and maybe in RTA. But apart from that, he actually has a lot of other users in PvE as well. It's just that there are other stronger Espers who excel in his role. Next up we have Falken. I still do not find any use for him thus far. Some players do use him, but I personally do not use him, and I don't think that it's really worth your epic starry mons unless you have a lot of access. Now Heng Yue is going to go straight to S tier. I feel like she is still as good as always, but with the addition of Astral Witchcraft, she has become a lot more powerful. Jacob is going to go straight into D tier. He used to be useful in APAP, and he used to be useful in some of the story content as well, but I feel like he completely fallen off and he is currently not useful at all. Jiang Man is definitely going to go into S tier, there is no debating this. She's just the strongest free-to-play fodder farmer and she does a whole ton of damage for all your PvE needs and some of your PvP as well. Kara is going to join Alexa going to C tier because she only has very few users right now, and the main one being Dark Starlord. Lin Xiao, as always, is going to go into S tier, although I don't really use her all that much right now. I use some other Espers in place of Lin Xiao because I don't feel like her defense break is that consistent because it only hits the enemies one time. But apart from that, she carries a lot in one single kit and is definitely very helpful for all new players. Now Lumia is going to go into S tier. He is the best crowd control Esper right now. Next we have Louis. I am struggling between A tier and B tier. I think I'm just going to put him B tier right now because I am not using him as much as I would like to. But if you are using him, you might find that he deserves an A tier instead. And the reason why I put him B tier is because his damage doesn't quite compare to Chloe and he has far fewer users as opposed to Chloe. But obviously I'm not doing a one-to-one match just like that. I just feel in general there is not a lot of reason for you to use Louis aside from Holo Battle, Fafnir, and maybe the Dark Starlord. Now, Luo Yan used to be my favorite free-to-play Esper in terms of dealing with enemy heights, but right now I feel like there are a lot of other alternatives for you to handle height, a lot of free-to-play options in fact. So because of that, I think he's still quite relevant. I think he's okay, but I'm going to put him at niche tier right now on the C tier, just because right now I feel like he only excels in dealing with some of the more difficult height bosses. Next on the list we have Lin. Now I do feel like I'm using her a little bit more, but yet at the same time there is a love-hate relationship between me and this Esper, so I feel like she is pretty decent in terms of the damage output. But as far as content goes, I don't use her in Fafnir, I only use her in the Darkstar lot, and the reason for that is because there are just better Espers for Fafnir. So for example, Louis is better, KFC is better as well, which I will talk about in just a moment, and there are some other 3-star Espers like Tang Yun who excels far better than Lin. So because of that, I think I'm just going to chuck her into C tier right now. Now, Mona has definitely fallen off the charts because of the addition of some of the other free-to-play options that helps with fodder farming, and just in general, her users are extremely limited down to C tier, which is just basically your free-to-play Shadowfire team. Next up, we have Pritzker. He is going to go into S tier, but rather the lower end of S tier. So he is still very powerful with his 25% speed lead in holo battles, and he has some of the best crowd controls in this game. However, he cannot crowd control bosses, which means that you cannot cooldown reset bosses, which is his major setback. But apart from that, he is extremely strong. Now, Ren Si is just strictly a PvP based Esper, so I think I am just going to chuck him at B tier, no higher, no lower. I feel like he is in a really good position right now in terms of just handling PvP, but there are so many ways to deal with him. And then we have Sander, who is definitely going to S tier. He's probably one of the highest ranking S tier Espers in my opinion. He does a lot of damage, does a lot of AP control, stuns, has a tremendous amount of turn advantage, and he is just so well-rounded, especially with that speed lead. His only setback is he is incredibly difficult to build, but that only means that he has an extremely far potential in this game. Next up, we have Dahlia. She is definitely going to go into S tier, there is no denying this. She is so good at AP pushing, attack buffing, and crit rate buffing, and on top of that, she carries a lot of crowd control on her kit. She is definitely one of those few epic Espers that you need to max out her skills ASAP. Next up, we have Kaylee. I don't feel like she is that useful because she requires crit rate, and like I said before, if you want to run Espers with crowd control, most of the time you want to run them a little bit more tanky so that they are able to sustain, especially in Temporal Tower. But if you're going to be using her in PvP, which is probably where you might want to use her, then running her with crit rate with a lot of attack and as much accuracy as you can is probably the right way to play her, but then again, that then solidifies her position in C tier. Next up, we have Taylor. I would normally rank him at about A tier, but because of the recent changes in how he relates to attacking height in PvP, I feel like he definitely dropped a tier or two. So I'm struggling to put him between B tier and C tier right now, but I think B tier is probably a good place for him. He's still really strong, except that his main use being a height killer is now completely gone. But apart from that, he is still pretty good in speed cleaving. He's also really strong in holo battles and RTA, so there is that. Now here comes the twins. Now this is going to be a little bit more interesting, so I'm actually going to put the black twin all the way at S tier. I feel like he excels so strong on his own as well. So he carries an almost guaranteed defense break on his third skill, with an AoE slow on his second skill, and a seer debuff on his first skill. That is incredible for a DPS Esper. So if you're building really fast, he is going to be very powerful for you. But on the other hand, I do feel like the white twin is lacking a lot. So the thing is, most players try to run him with more DPS. However, his base attack is super low with 800 over attack. So normally I wouldn't really recommend you to go DPS unless you have the relics to back him up. But in most cases, the white twin is actually not going to perform at all without the black twin in action. So he is overly reliant on his black twin over here. So I am actually going to chuck him into B tier. He's still a decent crowd control Esper, just that in terms of dealing damage, he is definitely not there. And then we have Laura. So I used to think that she was incredibly strong because in PvP, healing reduces, not shields. But the thing is, her shield strength is so little, she only becomes a little bit more dangerous if she's an enemy in a Temporal Tower and not an actual Esper on your lineup. So because of that, I think I'm actually going to chuck her into D tier. I don't really feel like there is a need to build her right now. There is absolutely no content that requires Laura at this point in time. Next, we have Meredith. Honestly, there is no need to build her at all. And then we have Nicole, and this is really sad. I'm just going to chuck her into C tier because there is not a lot of use for her right now. She has a really good base speed of, I think, like 106 plus 7. And on top of that, she carries an invincibility and all that. But the thing is, most players right now, especially in endgame PvP or whatever, they will always bring some kind of buff strip. So in terms of relevance, I feel like she's lacking a lot. Now, Stewart is really good, especially in some specific content. For example, in Chronos, in APEP, in events, and in Holo Battle as well. There is a lot of ways that he can excel in dealing damage, and he does a lot of damage as well. Next we have Aurelius. I've tested him out before. His damage is just way too little because of his extremely low base attack of I think 963. And in terms of controlling, he doesn't even compare to the likes of Kaylee nor the likes of Longmian and Pritzker. So in terms of damage dealing, he's just not there, and in terms of control, he's also not there. So as such, I wouldn't recommend you to build him at all. Just build some of the rare Espers, like for example Melanie. Next we have Xiaoyin. He's really strong. He's definitely going to go into B tier. He's very good for Fafnir and probably decent in Chronos as well. He does a lot of damage as long as you have a lot of debuffs on the enemy, so he does require a lot of setup, but as long as you're able to provide that setup, he is going to deal the most damage in this game right now. Now, Alice is definitely going to go straight into S tier. She's probably one of the best Espers in this game right now, not even amongst the epic Espers. So her mere presence allows you to gain attack buffs every single wave that you start, and that allows you to not only speed up your runs, but to ensure that your runs are a little bit safer and a little bit more consistent as well with the inclusion of the attack buff. So she makes a lot of content very trivial, especially in the Desolate Lands, so I would say that she's kind of on par with even Unas. Next we have KFC or Li Guang. She is definitely going to go straight into A tier. She's pretty good. She's just not as efficient as Sander in terms of damage dealing, and that's because she is more of an AP battery than a damage dealer. But that's not to say that she is not good in dealing damage, and she is really good in handling Fafnir and some of the harder PvE contents like the Infinity Tower and the Temporal Tower. And on top of that, she's also a pretty decent Esper for PvP. And then we have Nick. Some players use him to counter JJs. I personally don't use him at all, but that's only because I have other Espers that can do the said job. So in terms of usefulness, I'll put him in C tier just because of how limited his use are right now. Now this is gonna suck a bit. I was so excited about Zhong Nan, but I think I'm also gonna put him into C tier. So the only reason why you would use Zhong Nan as opposed to using Longmian or Pritzker right now is because you want to use the silence effect. And the reason why you want to use the silence effect is because in the Infinity Tower, there are some stages that disallow you from using control skills, and silencers are not control skills. The same goes for taunts as well. And finally, we have Odette. Now, I used to say that she's probably really good in RTA. In fact, I said that she's meta in RTA. I take that back entirely. She's actually not good at all. So in terms of RTA, there is one obvious meta right now, which is just tank and spank. And she does neither of that. She does control instead, which is not really that good because there are other Espers who do a better job at controlling. So unfortunately, I don't feel like there is a lot of use for Odette at this point in time. So there you go, this is the epic tier list for 3.1.5. I hope you guys enjoyed it, I hope you guys learned something. I hope this was useful information for you. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. I know the S tier is kind of thick right now, but the thing is these Espers are just incredibly strong at this point. So quite a few of these Espers actually rose from A tier to S tier. But anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Derry Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.